Question number 6, James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and reads, does he stand by all of his answers to oral question number 4 yesterday?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Supplementary.
Order. 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 Supplementary question, James Shaw.
To the Prime Minister, will he be prepared to adopt a more ambitious climate target if it can be shown how New Zealand can achieve greater emissions reductions than 11% by 2030, even without including agriculture?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said in the House yesterday, the government has set what I think is a fair and balanced target of a 30% reduction off a 2005 base by 2030. I've indicated to the Parliament that the government is prepared to do more if we can find an answer to our agricultural emissions, which represent about half of the emissions that New Zealand has. I think that's set in about the right place.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Does he accept that an increase in renewable electricity generation from 80% to 100% can reduce New Zealand's emissions by approximately 5 megatons and therefore enable New Zealand to take a more ambitious climate target to Paris?
Speaker,
the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I don't have those details with me, but I'll accept the member's word that it's probably right. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, is we're one of the highest, we're one of the countries in the world with the highest levels of renewable energy already. The government's stated goal is to get to 90%, and we'll be working hard to do that. Whether we can get to 100% and what the cost implications of that would be, I don't know. But I suspect if you look at the fact you'd have to close Huntly and you wouldn't even be able to replace Huntly with combined cycle gas, that could be a very expensive process.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
So does he agree with Ministry of Transport advice that if 1/3 of New Zealanders switched to electric cars, we could reduce carbon emissions from transport by over 20% and therefore enable New Zealand to take a more ambitious climate target to Paris?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, yes, the government supports the view that electric cars have a strong place in New Zealand society, and I suspect as they get a bit cheaper, you'll actually see more people actually taking up electric cars, and New Zealand's well placed for that because the electricity that would drive those cars is largely going to be renewable. So again, that makes sense. But you have to look at the overall costs to consumers. We have to get to a point where, A, they make that choice that it's economic for them to do that. We have to get to the point where we can have enough of that electricity generation coming from renewable sources. But I think the government's working on a plan to get there on all of these matters. I stand by the view I said earlier. The Treasury advice that the government has received, that the target that we have set is actually a bigger cost share to New Zealand business and consumers than, for instance, the Europeans, who arguably have a bigger reduction target because it's easier for them to achieve that.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Or does he accept that if we planted half our marginal pastoral land in pine forest while letting the other half revert back to native forest, we can capture up to 24 megatons of carbon, therefore enabling New Zealand to take a more ambitious climate target to Paris?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, they're the members' numbers, but I'll accept them on face value. But again, there comes a cost with doing all of those things, and the government has been involved in assisting and having programs that lead to marginal planting.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
So in light of the evidence that there are plenty of practical, pragmatic steps that New Zealand can take using existing technology and even without including agriculture, will he now work with us to ensure that New Zealand can take a more ambitious climate target to Paris?
Speaker,
the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no, because as I said yesterday, it's quite legitimate for the Greens to have their own policies and to take those to the next general election. I think they should be honest actually with New Zealanders about the costs of those, because the member says here are all these things that you could do, but he doesn't say actually what the costs of business and consumer would be, and the answer is the cost would be actually considerable. I mean, the member stands up and tells us to get more renewable energy and a lower emissions profile from agriculture, and yet in the same breath I know is deeply opposed to changes to the RMA that would allow us to convert Huntly from coal to combined cycle gas. You can't have it both ways.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Isn't it time for National to get up to speed on the numerous economic studies, the latest being from the London School of Economics, that show that the majority of emissions reductions can be achieved in a way that has a net economic benefit to New Zealand?
Right,
Mr.
Honourable
Speaker,
Prime Minister.
I think the member does a disservice to the New Zealand Treasury. We have a lot of very bright people who work there, alongside many other agencies that have looked at that matter. The member should look at the official advice that the government received, but the official advice from the Treasury, as I last recall it, is that the cost of New Zealand carrying out a target of even 30% reduction off a 2005 level comes with greater costs than comparable countries.
Question number 7, Richard Prosser.